Welcome to the Realitone Podcast. I'm your host, Antonio Alcazar, and today I'm here with Ronin. Say hi, Ronin.
Hello.
If this is the first time you've joined me, let me give you a little rundown as far as how this works. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my guest to tell me the words that he uses to describe himself, both politically and spiritually. Then I'm going to run down a list of topics that may or may not change in the future, but I think I've gotten into the habit of these specific topics. It worked really well with my last guest, so I'm going to just use that again. And then, after he's clearly defined everything that he thinks, we're going to go into a little bit of his upbringing and explore a little bit about how he got to this position in his life. And then, if there was something said throughout the conversation that I felt required a little bit more examination, we'll hit that. So, without further ado, how are you, Ronin?
I'm doing well.
That's good. Let's start with politics. That's how I've been. Unless you want to start with spirituality.
You're the host.
All right. Do you have a word for yourself politically?
I would say I line up more on the liberal side of things. I am very, very in the Bernie Sanders camp.
Okay, you consider yourself, the word that you use is liberal.
I make the distinction of either democratic socialist or progressive.
Okay, so not necessarily liberal. You use democratic socialist or progressive.
Yeah.
Okay. And spirituality, do you have a word for yourself?
I don't have any sort of large framework or anything. I don't have a word to describe it. I would just say that I'm spiritual.
Okay.
That I have spiritual inclinations or whatever for the non-physical stuff that can't be explained.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a box for that.
So you consider yourself spiritual then?
To an extent, yeah. I wouldn't say that I'm guided by spirituality or any of these kind of notions, but I have a dimension of understanding of that kind of stuff.
So, okay. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Sure. Right now, I just want to know your labels.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with the politics. Ronin, tell me what you think about climate change.
Well, it's a natural process that we have accelerated through many, many years of burning fossil fuels.
Okay, so you do then think that we're at least partially responsible for that?
Primarily, I would say.
So we're primarily responsible for accelerating the rate at which the planet is heating?
Yes, very much so.
Okay. And how about the need for environmental protections? Do you think we need that?
Absolutely. We need the planet. The planet doesn't need us. So anything that we can do to make our presence more sustainable and ongoing into the future, that's what we need to do. Okay,
so what I think I just heard you say is that the only reason we should take care of the planet is so that we can live on the planet. Because if we don't take care of the planet, we'll just die off, but the planet will still be around.
I mean, that's the most practical way you can put it to just about anybody without getting into any sort of morality or whatever. Like, we need to take care of the planet because A, B, C, and D or whatever. It's just like we have nowhere else to go.
Sure.
And food, water, shelter, these are primary needs for all of humanity. And if we don't have any of that, then...
Sure. And so we need to take care of the planet so that we can stay on the planet.
Yeah.
So morally, though, do you think that we should be taking care of the planet? Do you have a moral stance on it? Or do you think pragmatically we should just take care of the planet and morality doesn't even matter here?
I think we should care more for the planet than we do. We, at least as far as what I've experienced around here, is that there's this mentality that it's all just natural resources for us to exploit. Conservation isn't really a thing when there's monetary gain in the here and now. It seems to be why it's taken so long to get real policies pushed that will reduce carbon emissions, make the things that we use more efficient. We're all just going through using things that are less than efficient just so somebody can make a buck off selling us each little piece that they come out with.
Sure. Okay. So definitely need environmental protection. Definitely our fault. The Earth is getting hotter.
Yep.
Okay. Gun control. How do you feel about gun control?
I have trouble nailing this one down because on the one side, you want to be on the side of more rights, more individual protections, and on the other side, you don't need bump stocks. You don't need war machines to defend your home. I wouldn't say I have a problem with people hunting recreationally. In this state, it's a pretty big thing. I grew up and my dad went deer hunting, so I don't see that as necessarily an issue. But where we're at right now with gun control is we've had a long time of lobbyists and people trying to make it as unrestricted as possible, with the exception of criminal records and felons and stuff like that. But whether it's like gun show loopholes or private sales, we've had a lobbying firm at the forefront of making sure that the right people can get as many weapons as they want, and that goes largely unchecked.
So you think that while being able to own guns is on paper okay, some people who shouldn't have guns maybe have guns?
A lot of people who shouldn't have guns have guns. And a lot of people who shouldn't have many guns have many, many guns.
So, okay. Well, I'll explore that. So, but for the most part, the way that the gun laws work currently is fine for you?
No, we need more background checks. We need restrictions on semi-automatic weapons. We need... I was actually kind of thinking about this the other day, and if I have to register my vehicle every year with the Department of Motor Vehicles, then I don't feel that it's too much of an inconvenience to gun owners to say, yeah, you need to annually register your firearm to make sure that you still have it, to make sure that you are still in possession of it, that you didn't sell it, you didn't get rid of it, to help follow the trail of the gun. Okay.
How about military spending? How do you feel about military spending?
We spend way too much, and there really isn't... I don't understand where it all goes. I'm not that up on military budgets, except that they're the last ones to get any kind of cuts. We will cut spending from every other department, every other agency, before we cut military spending.
So you're against how much we spend?
Yeah. And I mean, if we're spending that much on the military, then I would hope that we get more out of it than vehicles, bombers, and weapons. I would hope that we get public works. I would hope that we get infrastructure. I would hope that we get advancements for the country, not just advancements for our spear tips.
Okay. Immigration. How do you feel about immigration?
It's way too slow. It's been kept that way for a long time. Nobody really likes to say it, but America thrives on slave labor. It has for a very long time, and that we've had a perpetually marginalized section of the working class that works more, gets less, and nary a thought is spared for them, is continually unfolding tragedy. So immigration is good. We need it. We need diversity, allowing people in. That's sort of the unique perspective of the United States, is that, bring me your poor, your cold, your huddled masses.
That used to be the case. I don't know that that's the case anymore.
I mean, judging by the current administration, you wouldn't think so, but these are sort of supposed to be our higher ideals. Even though the words on the Constitution didn't apply to the slaves back then when they said all men are created equal. The ideals that we strive for in that document is that we're going to uphold that promise, that we believe that we can get there even though that's not where we're starting. So keeping that promise, keeping that American dream alive is important, I believe.
So in your ideal America, immigration is something that is perpetually encouraged for everyone, not just for like skilled applicants or people that are trying to marry in. Like, you think that the borders should welcome all immigrants?
Yes, they should. I dislike the idea of a hard border, of a border wall, of medieval structures to answer modern problems. This is probably pretty naive to say, but within the United States, there are no borders around each individual state. We have imaginary lines on a map that say this jurisdiction, that jurisdiction, and everyone can handle their own laws and things. I mean, extrapolating that outward in between nations instead of just states. It's not impossible, but we just don't put any effort or thought into it because we need to have this feeling of national sovereignty that at our borders, that's the outside, this is the inside, that's them, that's us, and that's where the line is.
You're saying more ideally there'd be less of a separation between nations? Like it'd be more hazy where one ends and one begins?
I mean, I can go to the state line and I know where Wisconsin and Illinois are. I
got you. Okay.
And I don't need a hard barrier to tell me one or the other.
Sure.
I don't know. I'm veering off into like new agey, one world type stuff.
Hey, please. I mean, define. What's your ideal?
I wish I could trust that people could have a one world government that wouldn't be tyrannical and overreaching. But then again, that's just my own inborn fear of seeing systems being used against people for my entire life. But I would like to believe that we wouldn't need borders, that whatever your ID or your citizenship or whatever it is could be recognized and accepted, and it doesn't have to be, are you a citizen?
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I don't see the why, but I do want to explore some of that later on.
Sure.
Okay. Education. How are we doing with education in your eyes?
Well, speaking from my experience anyway, it feels like public education is like expensive daycare. The kids who excel, the families who really push people to do better can and often do. But for the majority of people who just kind of go to school to see their friends and hang out, I mean, that's what I did. I wasted my high school years just having fun, having a high school experience versus accumulating 5,000 years worth of collected human intelligence.
So the way our school is structured, you think could benefit from some new policy?
Yeah, we really need to come around to that. The process of education is to impart the knowledge of the past to future generations. And there's so much focus on go to school, get good grades so you can get a good job and make a lot of money. And where does your education, where does the knowledge and the wisdom of ages go from there?
Do you think post-secondary education should be provided for free?
Like college or
Yeah.
like doctorates?
No, like college.
Yeah. We're in the 21st century. It was unheard of before public school went up to high school. High school was the thing that you had to be like lucky or rich to get into. And then we said, no, you kind of need these 12 years. The K through we need this much time to cover everything. You're still learning. You're still So kicking that out an extra 4 years, 6 years, whatever you want to do, you're really only investing more into the future generations, and more so for the ones that really want it. And if we can get everyone behind that push for further education rather than the high school experience or the college experience. We can see a lot more benefits.
Okay. There's some stuff there that I want to explore in a little bit, so I had to write that down. How about women's reproductive rights? Who do you think should make those decisions? The state or...
No, that is the choice of the individual.
Always?
Always. No one would expect to have any sort of say over my reproductive choices or my reproductive health. It would be automatically assumed that that would be up to me and my doctor. There is no reason why that we should have extra attention paid to women's choices and women's abilities to make decisions for themselves with the guidance of their physicians.
Okay. And then healthcare. How do you feel about healthcare and its availability?
Healthcare shouldn't be a for-profit business, and that it's been able to do that for so long just kind of really underlines the late-stage capitalism, that we're squeezing every bit of money we can from every drop of blood from every person that we can. And that's neither sustainable nor healthy. Getting back to the whole democratic socialist Bernie Krat kind of thing, Medicare for all, universal health care. It's just a thing that should have been a long time ago.
Okay. How about the role of law enforcement in our current society? How do you feel about police?
We are asking far too much of them. They have to handle a lot of things that they should not have their hands on. So there's been a lot of discussion recently about defunding the police, reallocating funds to... So if you're in a situation, is a person with a gun the best resource to have to resolve the situation that you're in? And a lot of times that's no. We don't send cops to fight fires. We have firefighters for that. We have EMTs to handle urgent medical needs and emergencies. We're beginning to see that there is an alternative to a badge and a gun to get to the ends that society wants.
Do you adhere to the idea that we should defund or abolish the police? Do you have something that you think about as far as one of those two stances?
I mean, abolish seems really kind of knee-jerky, but defunding sounds good. It's a good place to start. If we can get to the point where we don't need a police force anymore, cool. But I mean, let's not put the cart before the horse.
Okay. You believe that there are reformations that can be made in order to alleviate a lot of the issues, and then we can work towards a new system rather than starting with the abolishing of this system and a hard reset now.
Yeah. There are too many people in this country that are averse to change, and sudden change makes them far too panicky.
Sure, difficult to work with.
Not even just like nervous or scared, but like full blown like I'm gonna die because the police aren't here. Panic attack, and if we can get there, if we can successfully get society to the point where we don't need uniformed officers patrolling the streets or pulling over random vehicles to do some searches or however it is that they make the quotas that they do.
Sure.
If we can get there, that would be great. That would be wonderful. But where we need to start is by recognizing that we're asking too much of them, and we need to take some responsibilities off of their plate.
Seems reasonable. Okay, last political question. Are you ready?
Sure.
How do you feel about socialism? And I know you already described yourself as a social democrat, but how do you feel about the role of socialism and the role of capitalism in current society?
So I have felt an affinity towards socialism since like the 6th grade when we first started learning about different systems in like world cultures class or world government, something like that. It's social studies.
Sure.
It's 6th grade, social studies. So yeah, when we did our unit on Sweden, and they were talking about how the top 10% or whatever it is that they get taxed more, and that money goes directly to the bottom 10%.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if those numbers are still true today, but that's what we were learning was, and that made sense to me. That made sense that the people who have more are required to help more for the sake of the country.
Sure.
And we are a society, we are a collection, a collective, we are multifaceted unit. And to sacrifice the lower end to allow the upper end unlimited income potential is it's self-defeating.
Do you think that people should be able to have unlimited income potential?
I mean, no. There should be a wealth cap. There should be an income cap. Rather than try and carve out something on my own, I agree with AOC and Bernie Sanders, the 70% marginal tax rate over 10 million.
70% marginal tax rate over 10 million.
Right. That doesn't seem so scary as saying you can't make more than
$10 billion.
Yeah, right. Like
Sure.
You have a hard cap at like a million or 2 million, and things are stupid expensive, and we inflate.
I don't know if you heard you heard the first podcast, right?
Yeah, and I don't disagree at all.
Yeah.
It's just my own greedy self feels like, well, we can have a little bit of room, but with the understanding that there is a maximum, and after that, 100% tax rate on over like 10. Just get rid of it. Give it to the poor. Give it to the needy. Give it back to the government so they can plant more trees and stuff. I mean,
sure.
There are places it can go besides your stock portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea of a 70% over 10 million. I think that is very fair. Because you're still getting to keep an enormous, egregious amount of money. It's just, you're really, really healthily taxed.
Your film stars and your sports athletes and people who have these contracts for many millions of dollars over several years, they can still do that. Business can still
up to
operate.
10 million. It's not taxed at 70%. I feel like that's the issue that people have.
Everyone wants to jump in. They're just going to take 70. There's 7 out of every 10 of your dollars.
Yeah. That's not how it works. The first 10 million are not taxed like that.
No. After that, after you've broken capitalism, yes, we're going to take some more money from you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I again don't think that that's unreasonable. Now, to the surprise of no one, everybody already knows who listens to this, especially 5 episodes in, if you don't know me. I'm a fairly left-leaning liberal. I pretty much run to the other side. And so I, of course, don't have any issue with a lot of these theories, but a lot of this is exploring other people's points of view. So I'm looking forward to having people that oppose these points of view.
It would be interesting if they had any new ideas to present besides just letting things be as they were under Reagan or something like that. The status
you'd be surprised.
quo seems
so hold
to be
on.
the policy that I've...
Yeah, but so that's just, I think maybe that's just online or in the media, those talking points. Because a lot of why I'm doing this is that I've never had a conversation with somebody where I was just like, that's completely unreasonable. Like every single time I have a conversation with people that are very, very opposed to the things that I think, I always end up thinking I at least know how you got here, Right. There's some thought behind what you're thinking, and that's why I want to do these. Because it's not that I don't think that some people can be outright wrong. I do believe that some people are just plain wrong about what they think.
Sure.
But I think that it's easier to explore why they might be to them when you know what they really think from them.
Right. Right. When you know how you got to now, you can say, okay, which turns did you take?
Yeah, well, that's the idea. Okay, so and exactly for them, the opposite. Like I want
someone who maybe doesn't have enough patience to listen to someone like me explain that these ideas,
especially in person, conversations can get so contentious.
You just get all your heart gets all tensed up, and you have to like fight or flight response to defend your ideas.
I'm not lying to you, man. This afternoon, when I was having my big argument with this guy that's going to be on this podcast, and I can't wait, there were moments where I literally in my head was saying, relax and think through the next thing that you're going to say. Because if you respond with what you want to say, it may be wrong. You may not be wrong, but are you sure you can defend it? Like, those thoughts go through my head when I'm having an argument, because I don't want to say anything that is emotional. Not because emotions are bad, but because when you're trying to discuss rationale, not like like there's obviously cases for emotion in argument, but when you're trying to discuss rationale, or even really when you're trying to discuss emotion, there are some things that maybe you can't defend that are going to play no part in an argument. And I literally needed to tell myself that a lot of times today, because when I argue with this guy, it never gets hurtful or offensive. He and I argue really well, but man, do I get heated.
Right. Combing your hair back away from your forehead. Like, why?
Because I'm
why
just like, okay. I have to literally be like, okay, let me talk about the argument that you're making right now. You know, like, instead of just going, how do you, like,
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right, man. So that was the last political question. Are you ready for some spiritual ones?
Ooh-wee.
All right. How do you think about God? Does God exist in your life?
I believe that our understanding of God is misinformed.
Okay.
If I were to believe in a higher power or some sort of creator entity, it would have to be much bigger than any of the religions have made him out to be. I say him because whatever, I don't believe in it.
Easy word.
Yeah, it's just there. It's stupid pre-programming. Our notion of God is one that's way too human, that's way too involved with things going on this planet. There is 14 billion light years worth of a universe out there, but we're supposed to believe that the ultimate creator of everything not only started life exactly here, but also made sure that that we had free will, but that we were also going to be judged for it, and then we have a bunch of stories to help keep us in line. I mean, that from the perspective of ancient man, that makes sense. You want social cohesion. You want a standard set of beliefs. This makes things useful for, the winter's coming.
Sure. Order.
People needed to follow the seasons and make sure that they were prepared for the coming cycles and stuff like that. And when everyone's praying and worshiping the same, that helps society move forward. But where we're at now is that we're getting stuck in these ancient notions and becoming more and more tribal about it. And if I were to believe in God, it would have to be something so big that it honestly doesn't care about what we do.
So, as it stands currently, though, there is no place or use for God in your life? Like, you don't actively need or have a communication with what you would consider a higher power in your life? So,
I don't have an exact belief on God, but if I were to believe in God, the check boxes that I would mark would be that
it would just have to be much larger than anything that we conceive of.
Larger than what we conceive, is uninterested and not micromanaging. So I may be getting a little bit ahead, but the idea of free will and what we're here to do, or what we're allowed to do, or the purpose of life, I believe is to thrive, is to just be. And that notion is heavily reinforced by a Carl Sagan quote that we're here for the universe to experience itself.
Okay.
And that idea carries over into, life is here to be. And what we do with that is part of the experience of doing all that can be done.
So your idea of a purposeful life is a life where experience is explored to its potential.
Well, that's not to say that individuals should go out and do as much as they can all over the place. It's just that every experience is another facet.
So more of a, it just is. Life is existing for it to exist.
Right. With the 7 or 8 billion people we have on the planet now, the amount of experiences being lived day in and day out, they run the gamut. And as far as universal experience goes, as far as being able to taste the richness and the bitterness of life on this planet, that it kind of runs the gamut. It doesn't have to be, you're going to be a senator, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a teacher. It's just, here you are, you grow, you experience, and that information, that life lesson gets fed back into all that is.
So you think there's some kind of connection? I don't want to say like data collection necessarily, but you think that there's some connection that everything has, some purpose for the experience?
Yeah, this kind of leads back into the idea of a big God, and is that life is not something that we have. It's not something we can hold or as a possession. Life is what we are. We are life energy, and we're just a different form of that. So whether it's plants, rocks, water, microscopic organisms, insects, everything, we are all life. We are all different facets on a very large, complex gem. And just because we are so distant or so dissimilar from each other doesn't mean that we aren't all a part of the same thing.
And do you believe in a soul? Does that have any place in your...
Soul, I think, is something that we can call our life energy on an individual scale. So you can call someone a soul because they're a unique manifestation of life energy. But then to say that one individual soul will continue to be that one individual soul once it has left the physical envelope, no.
So a soul is just a reference to an individual consciousness, but there's, to you, nothing that survives death as far as the soul.
What survives death is what preceded it, I believe. So the you that entered in your body at the moment of birth has been in existence since the beginning of all time.
So you do think that there's some kind of non-physical aspect to the human?
Yes.
Okay. You don't call that a soul, though?
No, because when people use that word, they mean it to mean myself, my conscious self that's going to continue to exist after my body dies. And I don't want to confuse those notions, because I don't believe individuality is the primary concern in the afterlife. In the afterlife, it's the reconnection with all of the non-physical.
Okay, so you do believe in an afterlife then, too?
Yes.
It's just, to you, there's nothing you about the thing that survives. It's some kind of what? Some kind of eternal observer?
Yeah, without having a better way of describing sort of like a Borg hive mind or collective, what we are returns to the source, and what we are is just energy. What we are is life energy. So when we return to where we came from, we just rejoin with everything else, with all that is. So,
and would you call that God?
That approach is what I believe God should be understood as. Yes,
just the all,
yeah.
The all in its union,
and it just is. And you don't have to worship it. You don't have to read a book or pray or anything like that. That's just, it's there.
Okay, so let's move into how you got to be this human being. When you were young, what was your experience like? Did you have a real religious upbringing, a real political one? What was life in your home like?
Politics wasn't discussed very much at all. That was something to be... Well, so I grew up a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
So very much out of touch with the secular world.
Sure.
And very much...
when did that start? How old were you when that...
It started before I was born.
Okay, so you were born into being a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, I was about one or so when my mom was visited by a witness sister who was preaching to her about life after death, because her older brother had just died in a horrific work accident. And when you're in that moment, you're asking these questions, you're looking for answers.
Sure.
You're trying to find solace and comfort, and knock on the door. Do you know what happens when you die?
Yikes, yeah. So that's just a perfect time for that to happen as far as
Yeah.
how susceptible you are to try to make sense of things in a way that might seem already established or known.
And it helps that it used the vernacular of regular Christian religious philosophy. So my mom grew up Catholic, went to Catholic schools, and had all that experience. So
Sure.
someone
So they were
coming
using words she knew.
right, someone coming along and saying, "Hey, we have a little bit of a different interpretation, but here's what we believe. Here's what we have found. Here's what we have concluded in all of our years of study." And it looks pretty big. It looks pretty impressive. And when that's all you're told about everything, then it seems pretty rock solid.
So you grew up then in a Jehovah's Witness environment.
I grew up with the confidence that we were the one true faith.
Yeah.
And that we were God's people, and we were going to be able to live in a paradise earth once Armageddon happens and God destroys all the wickedness.
And you said you grew up in a house that wasn't political, but you have pretty secure, or at the very least, very developed, structured political thoughts. When did that happen? Were you an adult when that happened, or
like middle school, high school?
You said that socialism started talking to you when you were a little younger.
Yeah. So politics is it's the thing that happens. It's the thing you have to be a part of, because if you're not, someone's going to make the decisions for you. So I think once I came to that understanding in my ninth grade government class, then it was like, okay, what's really going on? Where are we going? Who's making the decisions? Why have the decisions that have been made been made? Why haven't we changed them? Why aren't we further along? And it all just kind of kept coming back to classism, autocracy, oligarchy.
So you wouldn't consider yourself a Democrat. You're not like a part of the blue party, and you oppose the red party. You just have some very classist ideas that tend to skew left.
I mean, I use Marxist terminology because that's the language. That's the words you use when you describe, the working class, the bourgeois.
Yeah.
When you're talking about these kind of things, that's just kind of the words you have to use. But yeah, I'm more on the left because the left tends to agree with me about things.
Did you grow up in affluence, or did you grow up in struggle? Did you have any particular financial situation that caused you to align more with the working class?
Well, I grew up working class in a working class neighborhood. Single mother of 5 kids. We would often go from feast to famine.
Sure.
So while we knew comfort, it wasn't always lasting. And while we knew struggle, that also wasn't always lasting.
The idea of a working class single mother with 5 kids, when you say you went from feast to famine, was that the state's doing? Did your family have a lot of help from the state, or how was it that you guys were getting by?
Well, a lot of times it would be child support.
Oh, okay.
My dad paid child support, and a lot of times that kept food on the table and the roof over our head.
Okay.
And at other times, my mom's been in a private business owner for well over 30 years now, but it's a cyclical thing. She gets all of her business done before April 15th. And then what do you do as someone who owns your own business for the rest of the year when there's no work to be done?
Sure.
So that was the whole feast and famine. And I would hear that all the time from Mom, that she would say, feast and famine, we're enjoying stuff right now, but you need to be ready for when it comes.
Huh. So you kind of early on developed the idea that situations are very transient, that sometimes you have and sometimes you don't. That was just something that was ingrained in the way that you experience life.
Yeah.
So do you think that now has played into your ability to, I don't know, appreciate a moment-to-moment experience? And that's not really a topic that we've covered yet, but just kind of exploring that idea, because that's a very difficult thing for a lot of people when they suddenly have something and they suddenly don't have something. Both of those situations are incredibly big in a life. When you lose something that you really didn't want to lose, or when you gain something that you've always wanted, those situations can be very depressing or very manic. And you kind of grew up in an environment where things came and went, and it was cyclical. Did that have any kind of developmental?
It definitely makes it easier to roll with the punches. When your car breaks down and it's going to cost you $1,500 to get it back up and running again, being able to take that hit and be like, okay, well, I can do this, I can do that. Having that kind of flexibility growing up certainly did help address situations as an adult.
Sure. How do you feel about your ability to deal with like the moment-to-moment experience? Do you recognize in yourself an ability to deal with hardship that you appreciate, or do you have a hard time with difficult situations?
I don't think I have an easier time dealing with difficult stuff than anybody else. I think I struggle just as much as anybody else does. I get in my own head a lot of times. I'm my own worst enemy, and I'll just keep like a negative thought track repeating in the back of my head, and that gets me down a lot. But
so not a huge impact then. Not the impact I was expecting, at least, because that just seemed very, I don't know, interesting to me. I wanted to explore it a little bit because I've known you for some time, and I didn't know that was the case. But you've always come off as a very like in the moment person. Mm-hmm. I think you were one of the bigger influences when I started down the path of Buddhism. That was already something that you were already in. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought it was interesting to explore that idea, because I had never really considered that, even though we've known each other for the time that we have. So you didn't grow up in a very political family, but as you kind of went through the school system, you realized that politics were an important thing, and you just kind of started skewing left. When did you break out of the religious idea that Jehovah's Witnesses had the right theology?
I would say at about like 12 or so. I had just kind of gotten tired of...
12? 12 is young.
12 is
6th grade.
12 is that many years of going to church 3 times a week.
Sure.
12 is
it's when you start really like sharpening your teeth against your parents too, around 12.
Yeah, you start to gain sort of an understanding of your place in the world. You have a little bit more of your goldfish memory develop, and so suddenly not every day is just its own contained thing. There's a serialized sequence going on. Everything that happens the day after matters.
Yeah.
So it was at about that time that the structure, the rigorousness of being one of God's flock, it was burdensome. It was too much. It was, and for what? I had no sense of community in there. I was constantly reminded that my brown face stood out among all the white.
Oh, no way. So this wasn't even like a mixed race community? This was like an entirely white community?
Not in the congregation we attended.
Oh, yeah. That's what I mean. Because clearly I've met a lot of Hispanic Jehovah's Witnesses, so I'm not implying that there are no Hispanic, but the one that you were going to was entirely white?
Where we were, it was majority white. We were like the token brown family. And mom being divorced with a bunch of kids.
In an incredibly conservative environment.
Right. In a very insular community that has a lot of structure and rigor and presupposed notions about how things happen to people. Yeah. We were kind of like the token bad example.
Yeah, they like invited you in to look down on you.
That's what it felt like.
Sure. And so at some point you were like, I think I'm done.
Yeah. It was like the most honest, baked thought that I had sober. Like, it just out of nowhere, I'm like, well, all the other religions claim that they're the truth, and so does this one, and they can't all be right. So
not this one.
Not this one. Not any of them. I'm gonna go and see and figure it out for myself. And then the amount of pushback I got from
I bet they freaked out.
Oh yeah. Temptation is around the corner everywhere. That Satan hides in song lyrics and definitely in the holy books of other religions.
Yeah, because you suddenly were exposed to secular life. You went looking for secular life.
I looked to join it. I had always been like on the periphery.
Yeah.
Looking out at the rest of the world from the confines of the Kingdom Hall and that philosophy.
Sure.
I'm looking out and watching Christmas celebrations and birthday parties and
yeah, that's one of the things that I always thought was so interesting about you. You loved Christmas music because you never got to listen to it.
I still do. I'm a very annoying person when it comes to Christmas because guess who loves that they play it 24/7?
Yeah,
the guy who didn't get to at all growing up.
Yeah, so that kind of allowed you the idea that there are certain things that are implied that have no reason to be implied. And that if you go looking for something, you generally tend to discover that things can be very uniquely not explored already.
Yeah. I mean, insofar as you're taking somebody else's word for it, you're denying yourself the ability to experience it firsthand. And they'll tell you all sorts of cautionary, well, you don't need to burn your hand on the stove to know that it's hot. Sure. But, I mean, you probably should not keep yourself in a restrictive mental box if you want to enjoy the richness of this world.
So that's how we got here. Did you have anything else that happened in your life at any point that you know was a big turning point or anything like that? Something that like skewed your mentality as far as your spirituality or your politics? Some moment? Or is that pretty much how you got here?
I mean, I guess I rebelled against the religious establishment that I grew up under and the authority that came with that. But I can't think of like a single moment that eureka, aha! It was just kind of I was fed up one day.
So the reason I ask is because that moment for me was when I and came out of that thinking, okay. There's a lot to unpack, but that's singularly my like as far as the expectation that I have on other people's upbringing. Mm-hmm. That's a thing that happened to me. I don't expect to hear that. I'm just wondering if there was a moment like that for you where you were just like, okay, this is there's clearly something to experience that I should look into, because you've always been a fairly contemplative person. As long as I've known you, you've been very contemplative, and I was just wondering if that came from something, or if you just have been for some reason.
Well, I guess we could.
And I'm not saying that I was a contemplative or that I became a contemplative person because. Yeah.
No,
it's just that was a big moment in my introspection and my self discovery. That was one of those big moments. So that's why I ask.
I would say that my need to find answers and to explore, it really came out of being a Jehovah's Witness, being told all these things, and then needing to have a rationale for why I don't want to participate, why I don't want to believe. And that meant historical facts. That meant
because they're a very intentionally persuasive religion where they seek to have an answer for every question you might have. And most religions are like this, but they seem uniquely positioned to attempt to convince people. Like that's their kind of they don't like appeal to your morality or your fear, they try to convince you of all of these things. There's like rationale or pseudo rationale.
Yeah, there's
so you needed to kind of figure out ways to out rationalize their, whatever structure. You need to find answers to combat their persuasion.
They had all the answers in their Bible and all their supplementary documents and books and things, and they would study them all the time. And then new books would come out, and then they would study those as well. And it was just one constant, never-ending homework session of learning about Jehovah and Jesus and everything else in the Book of Revelations or whatever. It was a lot of just book work, and the only thing you can do to combat someone who's accumulated an academic level of information on something is to
information in quotes
information is to go academic yourself and say, okay, so history says this, we have carbon dating, we have blah blah blah. I have to go into the whole scientific method,
and you were determined
and
to
claw
rebel
back truth
from
them just kind of waving it away as being secular.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's. I got a couple of things written down here that I want to explore a little bit longer. Okay.
Sure.
So how do you feel about the purpose for the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution? The idea that, because you mentioned having guns being something that you were comfortable with only insofar as you used them for hunting and things like that. You specifically said that bump stocks aren't necessary and things like that. But the Bill of Rights wrote in the right to bear arms specifically to defend yourself against tyranny. It had nothing to do with hunting. It was, if your government tries to overstep their bounds, you have the means to defend yourself. Yeah. So in that regard, which is one that you didn't touch on when we talked about guns, how do you feel the role of its initial reasoning? What role does that have in our society, if any?
Well, at the time, it seemed like a very reasonable thing to do, and the American Revolutionary War would not have been won had it not been for average citizens doing their part to secure that freedom. So, on paper, being able to so the Second Amendment says that a well-regulated militia being necessary to a free state, and the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. So along with being able to bear and keep arms, a well-organized militia is also implied, and we don't have that. We just kind of focused on the weapons part. So if you're talking about having weapons as a deterrent from totalitarianism, authoritarianism, fascism, government overreaching and stepping in and really just putting the boots down on you. Yeah, in theory that works, and that would have been much easier to do when it took you a minute to reload your weapon. We're at a point now where, if there's going to be a populist uprising, there is going to be an unbelievable amount of casualties on the sides of the usurpers, because our military has been so excessively funded. Our the soldiers have been so excessively indoctrinated in service to the country and to the military, and to see themselves as being that before a citizen or a brother or a sister or whatever you are,
I would have disagreed with you, I think, last year. I think last year, by the way, if you're listening to this in the future, it is the year 2020. And I think
year of years.
Yeah, I think in 2019 I would have been like, I don't know. I think if it came down to it, soldiers, police, they might say, yeah, no, we refuse. But if anything has been taught to me this year is that I might be wrong about that.
And I mean, if the right to bear arms and the rights in general are to be unabridged, if they are not granted by our founding documents, if they're inalienable rights granted by the Creator, then stripping anyone of their Second Amendment rights should be a violation of everything. But we do that as easily as we take water out of a tap.
Yeah, I've been seeing that a lot more recently too, where we're very selective about who we allow to have full rights.
And I mean, if you understand American history from the perspective of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants begrudgingly handing out pieces of what they granted themselves to other groups, then you can see it that way, and we tend not to. And I'm sure there was pseudo intellectual conversations going on about how to manage populations of people and how can you trust that they'll accept your culture and your practices and all these sorts of good sounding but ultimately white supremacist goals.
Yeah, a lot of the but will it be okay for us if they're here? Yeah. Like they're fine as long as it's okay for us.
Yeah, they're fine over there where we can keep an eye on them.
Okay, so how do we defend the United States from foreign invaders if we don't adequately fund the military?
The question presupposes a ground war. The question presupposes that we need to have a standing army in order to defend us from, as you say, an invading force.
I mean, because we have a fucking lot of aircraft carriers. Do we not need those?
I mean, I honestly don't know that we do, but I don't honestly know that we can just toss them away, because I don't know how many other instances or countries or other peoples would see that as an opportunity to strike. But then, to me, this feels like a 20th century worldview. This feels like defending against World War II, because we're going to have another big war where we're going to send people in and we're going to have...
You don't think that can still happen? Like, I know that we haven't seen a lot of, like, borders shift, but I mean,
okay, so
China has disputed some borders, and so has Russia, and that is very recently.
Well, and that can happen, and it doesn't require a huge occupying force. The amount of bodies we threw at the beach on Normandy doesn't need to happen anymore, because when we can, when there's cyber threats to be worried about, when there's ICBMs to be launched. A standing army is sort of like the last line of defense.
Yeah, but our military spending doesn't go into our standing army necessarily. It goes into a lot of R&D for the major deterrents, like drones and stuff. I thought it did.
I don't know.
Actually, a person once who was in the military once told me that the majority of the money that goes into the military goes into paying all the people that work for the military.
And that makes sense, because it's so huge and everyone needs to get paid to do their jobs, and that makes sense. That's a ginormous
so then we'd have to scale back the size of the military, which just seems, in a world where we have made ourselves out to be the enemy. I mean, and maybe we're not.
We are the empire.
And, yeah, because maybe we're just a vestige of truth. But whatever. There are clearly enemies to the United States, right? Like, there are enemies to the United States, aren't there?
I mean, I don't know that I view the world that way. I know that there are. So currently, world politics, there are nations with their own goals and agendas, and those don't always jibe very well. But you
think the idea of, like, invasion or real, like, sovereign threat is...
post World War II, we had done a very good job of not moving the lines on the map that much. That the industrialized nations were...
I think that might be a little America-centric, because...
That may be.
Because I think some lines have moved since World War II in ways that the native peoples of those lands probably disagreed with.
So you're talking about, like...
all sorts of places. I mean, like, all of Eastern Europe is different than it was in the
Oh, yeah,
1950s. And same thing
So-
with like
so
a lot of the bordering nations in China and the like the Chinese borders. Those move around. I'm sure. I don't know a lot,
Right.
but I know Nepal had a situation and Taiwan it had a situation.
Still has a situation. Which one's the real China?
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like, there are clearly there are foreign powers that wish they could expand. You don't think that it's safer to just kind of throw a lot into the big gun, the big stick?
I think we already have
Enough?
the big stick.
But if we
we have enough nuclear arms to destroy the world several times over.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't think that it's the nuclear deterrent that's stopping any wars. I think it's everything but the nuclear deterrent.
Right.
I think everyone's like, you're not going to use that. There's
right.
Right.
I don't think anybody to the point
where
where we're not worried about that being dropped anymore because we know how bad it is. But I mean, I don't count anything out anymore. Donald Trump got elected.
Yeah, that's true.
So it may not be so far off to say that something like that could be on the horizon again, because with tribalization and people getting into their corners and not seeing the other side as being human, we're quickly approaching a very, very slippery slope where we're going to be at war with one another.
Yeah, but you think nuclear war?
No, but again, bad actors, lone rats, because lone wolf sounds cool.
Lone rats is a better one, but nuclear capability is rare, especially among those bad rats.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Al Qaeda or ISIS or any of these sort of terrorist groups are suddenly going to get their hands on a nuke and then just toss it off.
I mean, and even if it was one nuke. That wouldn't be smart.
No, definitely not. And the region to worry about more would be probably like China, India, Pakistan.
But they don't seem like they'd be like, we're gonna do it. I just don't like. I agree with you in the sense that seems very 20th century. The idea that they'd just be like, we're gonna launch all of them. What does it? Yeah. That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It really doesn't. And I hope that people see sense, but it's try and tell your fear to be rational.
Yeah, and also, and maybe irrationally, I have been proven wrong a lot this year as far as what I thought was possible, and so maybe I'll just shut the fuck up about this because maybe
it's a thing that
crazy people do crazy shit.
It's a thing you don't think can happen until it happens.
All right. So a situation where the borders are more open. How do you deal with what some people see as the inevitability of a rise in crime and lawlessness when you don't know who's coming into the country and you can't hold them accountable? Because a lot of the argument is that there is a lack of accountability if you just allow unfettered immigration.
So with any increase in a population, the crime statistics are most likely going to go up. You have more people, more opportunities for someone to take advantage of someone or something. So that's just is the water going to increase in a glass when the ice melts?
No.
I
had that. I was like, wait a second. Yeah, it'll go over.
Yeah, it'll totally fill up. No, it displaces the right amount. That was a very bad analogy. So the rise in crime is something that definitely will happen. But to say that it is an outgrowth of immigration specifically is fear-mongering.
Okay. So you don't think that it's just because there be more people, not because bad people are coming.
Yeah. But the idea that painting the newcomers as potentially bad when you have plenty of bad people that are natural-born citizens,
sure.
And then when you have even today, immigrants, whether they be documented or undocumented, commit crimes at a much lower rate than regular citizens.
Sure.
So it's not the new people that are the issue. You know, if crime is a problem, then our society is sick.
Okay, then, so if crime is not the problem, the other issue that is brought up is resources. We have enough poor in this country to be allowing unfettered immigration. The economic system here is already oversaturated. If we cannot take care of our own, how can we hope to take care of more people?
This argument to me is kind of a cop-out because we, by design, don't take care of our own. We, by design, leave people in the margins and leave them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and say, if there must be something wrong with you if you can't sacrifice everything and make something of yourself. You're just a lazy piece of crap that just isn't worth the time of day. And then we worship wealth when the majority of it is inherited. Did nothing to earn that wealth except just be born. And, oh, God, they have it all together. They must really be going places.
Sure. So you think that's a lie? You think that we could take care of our own and everybody that came here?
I mean, if someone could make a buck off of it, we would have done it a long time ago.
Sure.
If
so it's just a matter of not wanting to
absolutely,
take care of it.
When your primary incentive is monetary gain, you're leaving out a lot of opportunities to do good things.
Sure.
If you're only,
for the sake of doing good things.
Yeah. For you're not gonna do something that's gonna benefit somebody else if you're not going to like make money off of it or something. That's the justification a lot of times for allowing people to be as wealthy or have as many resources as they have, is to say that, oh, well, they reinvest that into jobs or they reinvest that into whatever, but there's no guarantee of that. And there's, I mean, Walmart makes billions.
Yeah.
Billions every year. And how much of that actually goes to pay their employees?
Not billions.
Not billions. Maybe $1 billion. But not the amount that the Waltons, a private family, rakes in for themselves.
Sure. And we covered earlier that it's okay to make money insofar as you're not hoarding it.
I mean, people are lazy and they want things to be done for them. So really all I want to do is to say, look, if you don't want to worry about taking care of the poor, if you don't want to worry about making sure that people have water that they can drink, then yeah, tax the rich, let the government make sure that everyone has an even playing field.
And then whatever extra you make, then whatever, keep it. Who gives a shit? The important things are taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, if the carrot of wealth and comfort is what gets you out of bed in the morning to go and be your best self, then I guess go ahead, pursue monetary gain. But don't allow your individual pursuit of monetary gain oppress people who don't have either that drive or your resources.
Sure. Okay. So you had mentioned earlier that you think that it is a good incentive to go to school and get a degree so that you can get a good job. But actually, you know what?
I kind of disagreed with that because, I mean, getting a job and making money is it's necessary, but
yeah.
The focus of education should be
to accumulate more knowledge,
right?
Yeah,
knowledge itself.
And also, I'm not super interested in following that line of thought. That was more of a.
It's for someone else's podcast.
Yeah, and also more of like a devil's advocate that I'm really trying to play here.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think we care so much about the high school, college experience rather than the accumulation of more knowledge?
So I think that people have been gorging themselves on fiction, on fantasy, whether it's in television or movies or books, that we are imitating art in our attempt to present a certain way. So whether that's in high school, in the cliquey groups, if you're a jock or you're one of the rich kids or you're outcast loser or whatever, we're presenting and performing these things because we're just modeling what we're experiencing. And
as far as entertainment, you're saying, like we're modeling entertainment.
Yeah, we're modeling entertainment as life, and we're at the point now where we've had this kind of idea ingrained in us long enough that no one's questioning it. No one's questioning that we do these things. That we
attempt to mimic.
Right.
Or that we even present these stories. You don't think that maybe there is some truth to the story? Or do you think that it's all performance? Like, where do these stories come from if they've always been performance?
Well, the stories themselves, I don't know that they're necessarily bad, but what they're informing and what's coming from them is this idea that we have to live a certain life, or that we have to have so many things done. There's no room for people to find necessarily themselves.
Yeah.
You know, we're all kind of just thrown into
Playing out the expected narrative.
right. So you're kids. So you go out and you play, and then you like certain things, and then you pick on somebody who likes something else that's different from you, or because they look different, and you're acting out these things that you see, and it goes unquestioned because kids are just kids.
Yeah, but I feel like that carries like throughout all of life. Like,
Oh yeah.
Like even now, like because
Adulthood
it's funny.
is high school with money.
Yeah, and even more to that, like I feel like we're very quick to remember how much we cared about trivial things like high school. Like I feel like it's very easy to look at a kid who's going through high school and go, man, when you're an adult, you're not even gonna give a shit. Like all of this is gonna seem so whatever. But even in adulthood, we're very fixated on these are the brackets of time that I have in order to complete these things. I feel like a lot of relationships are settled for because of expectations like that. Or now I have to get this kind of job, and you can't really explore what it might be like to do certain things because there's like a performance that you're doing for society that is expected of you.
Yeah.
Because of movies? That's really what the question is. Like, is that coming from the story?
So childhood became a time in people's lives that was viewed as separate and needed to be protected when the printing press became very popular. When children took to reading quicker than adults, we started to gain an understanding that childhood is sort of a formative time. It's a more special time, and that they can gain more and do better with different stimuli than just being sent to work immediately. There was a book that I had read a number of years ago that had explained that, like in artwork at the time, artists had trouble depicting children because they would put like adult-sized heads on little bodies, and the idea was that they had a hard time conceptualizing that children are different fundamentally than adults.
Sure.
So childhood is a very formative time in people's lives, and somewhere along the lines we stopped paying attention to how we're being formed in this time. We trust that the schools or the churches or the parents or somebody's going to take care of it, and that person's going to be a productive member of society one day.
I think that we've even kind of walked away from the idea that the youth should even be expected to prepare for adulthood until they're adults. It's funny, when I was young, I heard an adult talk about the idea that there is more of an expectation that your 20s are an extended adolescence. Mm-hmm. And that was when we were younger. That was before we had hit 20.
Oh my.
And there was already this idea that your 20s were an extended adolescence, that there was still no expectation on you, and that was the problem with today's youth type. That was the conversation that was being had.
Yeah, I didn't even come into that understanding until I had hit my 20s and saw that I wasn't the only one screwing off my life.
Yeah, but see, that's the issue. My issue is that it seems like society is encouraging the idea that children should stay children until they are literally, by definition, not children. And then we shit on them for not being ready. When it's like, we had the obligation to get the youth ready for adulthood, and we encourage this narrative that that your youth is a time to be enjoyed with no repercussions or thought to the future. And it's not that black and white. I'm being a little hyperbolic, but the idea that you should just enjoy it because you're not going to be a kid forever. And it's like, at what point should we start getting the youth ready for not being the youth? Because you only get to enjoy your youth for a sliver of time before you spend the rest of eternity as an adult. And are we not more worried about the eternity of adulthood than we are about the moments that you're a child? Like, and that's not to say that children shouldn't enjoy themselves, because there is less responsibility.
Yeah,
but also prepare, because adulthood comes quick.
I am honestly out of the loop when it comes to where anyone's drawing the line, because I've heard all sorts of like I've met people who got like kicked out of their house at the age of 16 and were expected to be adults, and they're not even legal adults yet. And then, you know, I'm sure everybody knows somebody who's late 20s, still living at home and incapable of doing for themselves.
There are some people that are in their 40s that are in a situation where their parents just cannot find it in themselves to gift them responsibility. And I feel like that idea of realistically navigating the world outside of performance is what kind of encourages the idea that we should be expecting these textbook experiences out of certain life moments like high school and college, where you're there to have that experience instead of to be preparing for your membership in society, which is why the institutions were created in the first place, or right. So they say.
So education is such a diverse field, and you'll have a lot of disagreement on the appropriate way to raise and educate a child. My brother, for a number of years, went to a Waldorf school.
What is that? I don't know what those are.
So
is that like a what is the other one? A Montessori kind of situation?
Yeah, sort of like a Montessori, like a private school with their own sort of curriculum, but this one was a bit more like hippie and crunchy and stuff. Like kids didn't learn to read until like third grade.
Okay.
And instead they learned how to pass on stories orally.
That's so cool.
On
That's
listening
great.
And learning and repeating stories.
So without knowing where this is going,
mm-hmm.
This seems interesting. I would want to explore that kind of like education structure.
And that's really sort of like on the fringe, because it's available to people who have the money to pay for the school and you know, in an area where they can have sort of like free range education,
sure.
where kids are spending more time exploring the world, and that their lessons are being taught to them in a different way than just sitting 30 kids in a classroom and smacking the whiteboard.
Sure. So how did he, because he's not a young person anymore, like he's in his 20s now, right?
Yeah.
How did he grow up? Did you see some intelligence there? Ability?
For him individually, he was in the school for only a couple of years.
Okay.
And my understanding is it's really a like kindergarten to eighth, at least this school was like kindergarten to eighth grade.
Sure.
And in order to really get the benefit, you have to be there for all of
the
that
whole time. Yeah, I think that's how Montessori works too. I'm not 100%. But
the curriculum is based on keeping you there for all of that time.
Sure.
So I don't know that how much of a benefit he got from it, sure. Having sort of a hybrid experience between something that
drastically different,
out of the ordinary, and then your regular, you know,
sure,
listen to the bell, Pavlov's dog stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Is that all I got for you? I got one more for you.
Sure.
So you mentioned God would be too big to care.
Yep.
But why would God have to not care? If there was some incredibly all-powerful universe creating all consciousness, why couldn't it care about everything? Like why have to distance yourself from
when I say
involvement?
Don't care, I mean that this entity isn't going to sit in judgment.
Okay. So you didn't mean all care, you meant above the want to care. Like it's like
that being isn't going to be micromanaging our thoughts, our activities,
sure, okay.
our
it was a framing
emotions.
issue for me, because like you weren't framing it as far as it not caring so much as it being above the petty day-to-day
Yes.
kind of, you do what you want. The universe is too big for it to matter type thing.
Absolutely. That notion would be more reflected than, being concerned about how much ankle you're showing,
Sure.
or how much of your face you're showing.
The true scope of the universe, of the cosmos, is just, that's too insignificant.
And that is just way too small, way too narrow,
way too specific. Sure.
Yeah, way too human.
Yeah.
Way too human for something that is supposed to be the progenitor of the entire cosmos, to be like, you need to suffer for eternity because of the things that you did.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ronin, for this conversation. This was a really fun one.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, all of them have been really fun. So, I'm not saying that they haven't been. I'm just saying, I really enjoyed myself. So, thank you for that. If you liked what you hear, there's a lot of ways for you to follow what I'm doing. I have a Twitter that's at RealitonCast. I am saying it right for the first time many episodes in. I apologize for that. Hopefully I've been clear enough on the internet that you've found me. But if not, my Twitter is at the RealitonCast. At RealitonCast, not the RealitonCast. At RealitonCast. My Instagram... Right. I gotta get it right. My Instagram is Realiton Podcast. Facebook at the Realiton Podcast. And YouTube, the Realiton Podcast. Those are the socials. I would really appreciate it now if you... I know I mentioned in the previous episodes to have a listen to a couple of episodes before you really decided whether or not you wanted to rate us. Rate me. But now it's been some episodes. So if you like what you're listening to, if you enjoy it, give me a rating and maybe a little review. Because I don't know if you know what 2020 is like, but the ability to thrive on the internet is a game of algorithmic details. And so if you are enjoying this, I would love to be able to speak to more people and speak, not just interview more people, but speak in a way that more people are listening. And for that, you need to give me some stars and write a little ditty about whether or not you like me. So if you could, that'd be really cool. I will see you all on the next podcast. Have a very awesome time until the next time that I see you. Goodbye.